Please come back. You're too sexy to leave. Please don't. Hello, dear High Roller. Would you look at the time? It's Fallout o'clock. I, like many others, despise the direction that Bethesda is leading Fallout towards, and I come to you today in an effort to perhaps manifest the possibilities for the future of this dearly beloved franchise. Now please, assume the position. So in order to understand the illness and the disease that permeates through the very essence of Fallout, we must first uncover the symptoms of the ailment. And it may be issues that can't even be solved by a... Yes, and it may be issues that can't be solved by a gutsy, Autodoc, or Doc Mitchell himself.
You're going down.
And to get a good understanding of the absolute state of Bethesda, we can only look at their recent history with Fallout 4, 76, and the show, alongside that of Starfield. We will first take a gander at Starfield and the show, because sure, the show may be made by Amazon, but Todd certainly had his fingers in that bloody pie, and he shall not escape my wrath. When Starfield launched, it really sold me on the idea that Bethesda's game design had become antiquated, stale, and repetitive. Starfield was in essence merely Skyrim in space, and I tried my darndest to play it. For reference, I play Star Citizen. That's how bad I hate myself. But I could not force myself through the quote, space game, Starfield. I was surprised that there was really nothing about that game or experience that made me feel like it was worth the time and effort. Then Bethesda also made the Fallout show with its awful choices in writing, such as the selectively aggressive death clause, the somehow yet again resurgent Enclave, the massive increase in zealotry and retardation in the Brotherhood of Steel, the annihilation and then reappearance of the NCR and a civil war in Caesar's Legion that gets resolved, leading the story back to, in essence, the start of Fallout New Vegas. The Battle of Hoover Dam, however, appears not to be the focal point of the story this time, but I believe it to be a supposed battle for New Vegas, with a probable re-entrance into the conflict in the Mojave of the Enclave. There are some kernels of greatness in the show, yes, but they exist in spite of, and not because of, the show, except for maybe the ghoul. So with these 2 points in mind, the antiquated game design and the awful writing that is plaguing Bethesda, I have very little hope for the future of the Fallout series. Hell, even the Elder Scrolls 6, whenever that's coming out. To understand the arduous and painful decline of Fallout, we must garner some sort of understanding as to what actually made the franchise great in the first place. Its world building, characters, its factions and its politics, the quests, the weird shit, the cool shit, and the awesome shit. And most importantly, the ability to respect the player's intelligence with challenging moral dilemmas. Not you! And also toilet humor and absurdism to balance out the bleakness of the post-apocalypse. Playing these games, we were faced with a strange sense of dread as we observed the architectural style of Fallout. In a way, it is very 50s Americana mixed with some Art Deco, but also critically mixed in is some quite Lovecraftian architecture. The bleak, overbearing and dead faces staring down upon you in silence. I wonder what sort of society that would conjure up such works, and it does hint towards a darkness permeating the depths of the civilization. The commies and the Red Scare were also in full effect due to the threat of the Chinese and formerly of the Soviets. Reading the lore, you can get a real sense of the true desperation of all of mankind during the 2060s with the resource wars and energy crises. And one of the greatest aspects of Fallout, as I've always found it in the lore, was always the deep state that was lurking underneath the fabric of Fallout's America, which later grows into the Enclave, a shadowy government organization that is highly fascistic, nepotistic, and most devastatingly, genocidal. I'm not going to pronounce it properly, for reasons.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Humor is of course one of those things that Fallout is most commonly praised for. which is something that has been misconstrued by retards as being the main focus or the driving force behind the games.
And we kind of settled on another very simplistic idea, which is just Fallout is a vibe.
Humor is a significant piece of any great work, and how it engages in this humor is critical. Just because you can sometimes get a good laugh in the world of Fallout doesn't mean that it's a comedy, and it remains very much a tragedy. Another aspect that has also been suffering with modern Fallout is one of the key ingredients that is perhaps not overlooked, but underappreciated. The horror of Fallout is something that always rests beneath the surface and offers us a sense of clarity and focus about the world. It shows us for as much humor, tragedy, and sarcasm that is found within the stories. This is still a world of terror. Fallout has dipped into both the interpersonal horror of murder, factional conflicts, torture, forced encounters of a private level, and even so far as cosmic, Lovecraftian horror. Whilst it is not overbearing, the horror element is still something that I respect deeply about the franchise, for it helps to ground the world and show that there were once people just like us in this world that suffered the worst of fates. Their families snuffed out in an instant in a nuclear holocaust that left most of the world barren. The vaults are also a great source of this fascinating horror, with the experiments run to test humanity's ability to survive in different and awful circumstances. Unless you were in a control vault, of course. It is a world of great and for the most part tasteful nuance that has slowly and grindingly been eroded away from the later installments of Fallout, because I believe that the writers and directors are focused on the wrong things. One of the most clear-cut issues with modern Fallout that we can easily observe is the utter unwillingness by Bethesda to let go of the past, whilst simultaneously despising it. They want to be unburdened by what has been, so that they can sell us more shit. Some franchises like Star Wars with its sequels clearly attempted to, let go of the past, but in this case, I speak of it in a different manner. Whereas Star Wars was telling us to let go of the older movies because they are old, and this is the new cool thing, and the past doesn't matter anyway. Bethesda's Fallout cannot let go of the past because they do not wish to disturb the series' status quo. The Brotherhood of Steel, the Enclave, Super Mutants, and Bottle Caps, but also the Wasteland. These are but a few examples. Which may seem a bit confusing to point these things out, as a franchise is of course most well known for its tropes and most recognizable features and innovations. But in this case, I raise these as a problem because Bethesda misuses and misinterprets these different things because of what appears to be a fear of moving away from these things and trying new things, or new material. Take the Wasteland for example. It's not just the wastes that matter, but what it represents: the void, death, and the lack of civilization within it. In Fallout 1, we are first introduced to this great wasteland and all the death and despair we find within it. But there is still a kernel of optimism within it, which we find in the starter town, Shady Sands. This little village barely holding on will eventually rise to become the epicenter and capital of the future New California Republic, which slowly but surely seeks to civilize the wastes. Albeit flawed, they are doing what they can with what they have. They even go so far as to introducing their own currency, which goes on to replace the bottle cap in Fallout 2, which then of course Bethesda brings back in later games. For reasons. But Bethesda cannot allow Fallout to be without the iconic dead wastes. So no, the NCR must go, until they walk that back and suddenly bring them back when it's convenient for them.
I clapped when I saw it!
It's hilarious to see how Amazon and Bethesda went out of their way to kill Fallout New Vegas' legacy, only to bring it back, but this time way shittier. It's one of the most perplexing story decisions that I've ever seen in my entire life. Never before have I seen someone struggle so hard to remove themselves from the legacy of its superior, only to end up back in its shadow, struggling to make a worse version. Oh wait, no, that's modern Star Wars. Like I mentioned before, the choice to rid themselves of the NCR only to bring them back, alongside for some reason either keeping or yes-manning House, but also keeping the Legion, is a confusing mess. Because what it seems like Amazon and Bethesda are doing is to, in essence, retcon Fallout New Vegas because Bethesda is jelly about Obsidian having made a superior game to theirs. It's kind of like their very own version of The Force Awakens, where the new people ripped off the previous, greater works homework but still managed to get an F-. Stunning success! The great nuances of the world of Fallout, the politics both internal and external, the greed, the need to survive, we saw probably the greatest aspects of this in Fallout 2 and New Vegas, with the exact opposite being true for Fallout 4, where we got to say yes in 4 different ways. But nuance also means that you respect your audience's ability to think for themselves, to make a judgment on the situations that you put them in. And we can't have that. The Enclave is the ever-looming super-fascists, with the Brotherhood of Steel being fascist light, and the Institute being commie bastards. The NCR is of course America bad, and Caesar's Legion is of course America bad. And the Minutemen's ideology being to be as fucking annoying as possible. I have serious doubts as to the nuance and complexity of the factions, but I will have to cover the Institute in particular a little bit later. The changes Bethesda has done over the years are a consequence of many factors. I would argue also that Obsidian has gone through these changes as well. These changes are partially caused by the problem with modern gaming studios, which is the new breed of game developer which has taken over from the passionate ballers of the 90s. They may wear the company name, they may publish games with the titles of the games we love, they are imposters and an invasive species that we must rid our spaces of. And building on the difference between the 90s ballers and the new breed of game dev, one of the key differences are the spaces in which they existed. The game developers of the 70s, 80s, and 90s were the pioneers of the different genres, technologies, and franchises that we enjoy to this very day. They made games, especially when it comes to PC, that were still quite niche. They made these games with nothing but their hopes, dreams, and a budget of a half-eaten ham sandwich to carry them across the finish line. That might be a little hyperbole depending on the studio, but you get my drift. The new breed of game devs, the blue-haired Karens we may so often come across whenever we see a behind the scenes of any modern game studio, is a symptom of the change. They have come in after the wider acceptance of gaming, where we now have universities that are famous for producing game developers and games. These new developers aren't exactly driven by the same fervor and passion as the previous generations because many of the new technologies that have been developed serve to hold their hands throughout the way, whereas in the early days some of these developers had to craft their own tools or engines to make their games function. I'd also argue that the lack of risks and the lack of desperation in the modern corporate game developer just isn't the same. They, of course, like anyone else, needs to put food on their tables. Who am I kidding? They order food online so that a minority can deliver food to them in all weathers, so they can keep producing their, art. Even though some of the original Fallout creators are still out there working on Fallout games, they have changed with the times. They are not the young men they once were anymore, desperately needing to succeed or be out on the streets. Now I am really on a tangent because I think that the easiest way to illustrate this is to compare modern South Park to the old South Park. You can clearly tell that Matt and Trey have changed over time as they grow richer and older. In the early days, they were outsiders desperately trying to get in, but now they are in, and they are the inside. Whatever that means. But because of this, they can't take the same risks anymore, and they have grown more stale and formulaic.
Fox News has obtained some footage of President Trump seeming to be fucking Satan.
I believe that this has also happened to plenty of our sorely missed older game developers. They have families to feed, so risks and daring are not exactly the wisest of moves. But for however off-base the older game developers may have grown over time, the modern game developer seems to have forgotten that they exist because of, not in spite of, the risks, labor, and passions of those that came before them. And they squander these gifts and struggles because they are in the future, and everything that they do must automatically be better than what the problematic old devs came up with. Whenever a company pretends to make games for the fans, starts to hemorrhage money, and fires a bunch of their employees, that is fundamentally a good thing. Because the more of these sorts of ideologically motivated people that are removed, the better. Believe me, if they were doing anything actually important, they'd not have been fired so abruptly. It is both frustrating and hilarious to see these companies seated on a gold mine dug and built by their betters, ready to be utilized to entertain its audience and make money for the company, but then only having it be squandered by retards. But by the way that Bethesda and companies like Bethesda behave, it's like they actually hate money. The enshittification of modern games media, at the very least in the mainstream, is a horrifying development as a gamer. The most oppressed of peoples. Partially it has been brought on by the games as a service philosophy, and now with Sony's latest example of you will own nothing and you will be happy by deleting all of those movies. I can't wait to see how Bethesda will develop and make their own spin of this very same concept for the next collector's edition of a Fallout game. Jesus. Perhaps you won't own the T-45 helmet that comes with, but you will have to pay a monthly subscription to keep this physical object that you bought, or else a grenade inside of it will detonate and kill you and your entire family. That'll be $14.99, please. And not even a game studio as successful as Bethesda nor their parent company ZeniMax is strong enough to resist the great failure of Microsoft. It is impressive to see how much money Microsoft has spent over the years to accomplish absolutely nothing, sacrificing the Xbox and giving Sony and the PlayStation a near total dominance of the console space. It feels like I'm standing here waving a wad of cash at Bethesda, begging them to please, Todd, for the love of God, make me the game that me and the community wants, not the committee. I want to give them money for games and stories that I care about and that I enjoy, but for whatever reason, they refuse to give it to us. Like I previously described, one of the greatest issues for Bethesda's Fallout is the inability to move on from the status quo. The Brotherhood of Steel, the Enclave, Super Mutants, and Caps, even Vault Dwellers, but most importantly, the Wasteland. Bethesda appears terrified of allowing segments of humanity to start reconquering the waste because it may ruin the Wasteland aesthetic, but as this appears to be the case, why not make prequels set before, for example, the NCR and the Brotherhood of Steel? And also, why don't they seem to grasp the concept that having a pseudo-America and pseudo-Rome exist in the Wasteland is a great way to contrast civilization against the wastes? You can still have the Wasteland in Fallout while also allowing civilizations to grow, Bethesda. It's a fine idea and could be exploited very successfully, just like Fallout 2's New Reno and New California Republic and Vault City showed. It shows the dangers that humanity may end up there once again in an apocalypse if they are not careful, and how fragile civilization truly is. But due to the necessity of keeping the exact same formula alive, we cannot be shown that civilizations may rise and bloom again, because seeing how new fledgling civilizations tackle a post-apocalypse is so totally boring, isn't it? I believe that Bethesda does not see Fallout as art, or at the very least, no longer does so. And it's something that we can see happen quite commonly with different franchises and IPs where sadly, due to the popularity of the franchise, it begins to cannibalize itself and its legacy to the detriment of the whole franchise. As good as Walton Goggins plays the ghoul, when he says, "Never underestimate the power of brand recognition," I do not take this as any sort of snarky, sarcastic, or ironic joke by the writers. I take it as a literal self-report because of how they are portraying the world of Fallout. It's no longer about the nuances of the characters and the stories told within the world, but it's all about boiling down the complexities of the world into as simplistic imagery as possible to give the illusion of Fallout, instead of a genuine continuation of the story and the art. Every new piece of content, story, or whatever that we find awful is explained away by dangling keys in front of our eyes, as if we do not notice the problems. Even a constant supply of memories can't hide a terrible plot. Bethesda and Amazon have almost completely ruined the Brotherhood of Steel as one of the most clear examples, turning them from an isolationist, suspicious, and selfish but still somewhat lawful good group into a pseudo-enclave. The plot and the factions of the Fallout show appears to be laid as they go along with no clear northern star of where the trajectory of the world is actually headed towards. It's driven by what may sound cool, but not what makes Fallout great. So now it is time to gaze ever boldly into the possible future of Fallout. I shall try and divine the future of the next Fallout game, which naturally will suffer the consequences of the show and maybe even act as a sequel to the show. In my mind, I believe that a future installment of Fallout may look a little bit like this. We'll get the same recycled main story, only flipped on its head between Fallout 3 and 4. So this time, it'll be a cousin looking for his uncle.
I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
What's that make us?
Absolutely nothing.
That makes sense, right? I have never played Fallout 76 for more than 10 minutes, and I was at first quite satisfied with the intro in the vault, but the second I stepped out and saw the ghoul there, I was beyond words. How this man made it to the opposite side of the country from California is beyond insane, and that he made his way all the way back with the same equipment that he's always been known for is, it was a choice, and it's awful. That, alongside the awful quest design and the inability to randomly kill AI, it feels like an intensely arcadey experience that was further aggravated by the goddamn hip marker damage word thing sounds. I hate them so fucking much, and I am terrified that this sort of crap will be in the next installment. I guess it could be boiled down into the theme parkification of Fallout, where the thoughts they try to conjure up in your brain parts are better than anything actually present within the game. And of course, it would not be a game or a movie made for the modern audience unless our expectations were subverted somehow. The characters will no longer feel like actual people living in the post-apocalypse, but will be built upon stereotypes, references, and marvelized meta-humor brought down on us like a hammer by our new millennial overlords. I can't wait. No longer will we be troubled by feeling emotions such as fear, sadness, conflict, or hatred, because those are bad fifis and we can't have that. Any tension will immediately be spoiled and ruined by misplaced humor and terrible writing choices. Bottle caps, super mutants, Brotherhood of Steel, vaults, the Enclave will return again somehow, capitalism bad, communism misunderstood, plus 100 million social credit, yes. And with this complete lack of willingness to innovate in the series in ways faithful to the world, they will instead choose to cower in fear of change. Because for some reason, Bethesda and modern game development studios are terrified of change, but they also hate the past, but rely entirely on the past.
Let the past die. Kill it, if you have to.
I understand that I've previously said I don't like some of the new stuff that they have added, like the Institute, so I get it. Bethesda is between a rock and a hard place to please the older, jaded fans of the series. But I will do my best to explain my position. I do not enjoy the Institute's quest or its inclusion in the world of Fallout, as I do not find that the robots and the technology that they are dealing with and the general design of everything does not flatter the overall aesthetic of the world. Nor do I believe it was a good addition due to introducing so many fantastical pieces of technology that do not make sense in comparison to the other technologies available within the same world. It's jarring and it gave me total whiplash when I played Fallout 4 for the first time. Just the teleportation technology alone was on such a high-tech level that I struggled to see how they could figure that out, but not a transistor. Yes, I am of course aware of the Mothership Zeta DLC, where the aliens are shown to have teleportation technology, but this tech is very different from the Institute's. The alien tech seems to be driven by a system of beacons with a clear start and end point, whereas the Institute can teleport people within a certain range wherever and whenever they want, regardless of end or start point. The best example of adding greatness to an already great IP is without a doubt in my mind Andor. They added plenty of new and exciting things while still maintaining the feel of Star Wars, alongside respecting what has been and competently making additions that skillfully builds out the world. This level of writing skill and competence is something that I believe that modern Bethesda lacks on a fundamental level. That shall not soon nor easily be regained. And by God, I cannot praise Andor enough. If you haven't watched it and you have any interest in Star Wars, you've done yourself a disservice. It is a perfect prequel to Rogue One and A New Hope, and it helps to fill out the world of Star Wars incredibly well. I just wish that we could be treated to this a bit more often. But that is, of course, too much to ask. There are, of course, plenty of talented, dedicated, and willing individuals in Bethesda that, if properly utilized, could revitalize the ailing IPs that Bethesda are currently holding hostage. If only Bethesda would actually choose to utilize these talents remains to be seen. And this, by the way, is just me making up stuff because I have no idea if this is actually true. I'm just assuming it because I'm optimistic. It is frustrating to watch something you care about be fuddled up so severely. You wish for them to succeed and you want them to do well, but alas, at every step of the way, they step on the rake of the consequences of their own maddening actions. It's a bit like having a family member being a crackhead. You want him to get better, but he sold your microwave, so now you've disowned him and he's dead to you. And even now, in recent news, it appears Obsidian are going to give another crack at making a Fallout game. Only a handful of individuals that were a part of the original founding team remain, however, meaning that most of the veterans that made such titles as Fallout New Vegas good are long gone. There might be some young whippersnapper that may have survived the great Xbox purge, but alas, I doubt there is enough competence or goodwill towards Fallout that there is any risk of it being good. Even with Tim Kaine, one of the original creators of Fallout, remaining at the studio, Bethesda's long fingers will surely be put into his pie at every turn, as I believe that Bethesda won't risk another shaming on the level of New Vegas. And remember my comparison to South Park. I would argue that Obsidian has suffered a similar effect, but also it could be the case with the receptions of Obsidian's more recent titles like Avowed and the positive to mixed response of the Outer World games. I am mashing X to doubt the quality of a potential new Fallout game by Obsidian, especially since they cancelled Avowed 2, which means that they don't believe in their own shit anymore. And neither should we unless they prove otherwise. I find it heartbreaking to see something that you and I enjoy and care about slowly turn into nothing less than complete and utter ass. And for what reason? I can't even attempt to fathom why they are treating one of the most famous franchises out there in such a manner. This is a money printer franchise that they, for whatever reason, are spoiling because of sheer and utter incompetence. ZeniMax, Bethesda, and Amazon probably no longer loves Fallout, and they cannot nurture that which they no longer love. They have abandoned a golden child to an uncertain future. What they do, however, have is the love for money. And at every point where we have love and appreciation for this IP, Bethesda will find a way to milk it, feeding us a steady supply of memberries. And that is how an RBMK reactor, and that is how Bethesda will continue to destroy Fallout. Thank you all very much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Money me, thank, and bye. As always, a stupendous thank you to all my wonderful Banu merchantmen, without whom all of this would be improbable. A deep and most humble thank you to my wonderful Apex Fishies, Fond, Raptor Jesus, DJ Crowbar, Half-Breed Bastard, Magic. A suspicious thank you to my Sustremings, Unknown Tim, Mouseclick, Raubvogel, Nilsy Boy, Austrian Let's Play, DJ Crowbar, Combat Creations, Half-Breed Bastard, Leduc, Davidri. An ostentatious thank you to my fantastic people, Ifanura, Styles, Neoma, and Ignore Me. And a benevolent thank you to my enthusiasts, Dark Silver, Nofa, Beskar Armor, Volteca, Elenium Productions, XDK, The Ham Jam, Noclat, Comrade Winston, Bloodix, and Monk. And a natural thank you to all my wonderful herrings and roes. Thank you all very much for the money.